Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends. Welcome back to our Entitled People series, where you'll hear incredibly entitled stories about people who think they can do no wrong just by being themselves. In this episode, you'll hear 6 stories. The first one, OP fires an entitled waitress. The second story, and the one you're here for, a mom lets her kids run wild. And we'll finish up with a lovely Karen accusing Op of stealing bread. It's bread, guys! I hope you enjoy the stories today, and do hit that subscribe button for future stories if you're not subscribed. So, this happened a couple of years ago, but I randomly thought about it, and I thought you guys might get a kick out of the ridiculousness. I had this employee who was a woman in her late 30s or early 40s and was your stereotypical mommy. I'm a good deal younger than her. At the time I was around 26 or 27. Right away it became clear that she had an issue answering to a woman who was much younger than her. She talked back a lot and made it clear that she felt she knew more than me and shouldn't have to listen to me. When she disagreed, she would frequently bring up the fact that I had no kids and she had 4 to disregard my management abilities, as if that was in any way relevant. Here are just a couple of anecdotes of what I had to regularly deal with from her. We had a problem with employees being on their phones excessively, her being one of the worst offenders. I held an employee meeting where I reminded everybody that they weren't allowed to be on their phones at all, and we would be a lot stricter about that moving forward. She interrupted my speech to say, "Well, the problem is, your generation can't handle being off their phones for more than 2 minutes." I pointed out that she was on her phone all the time too. Her reply was, "It's different when I'm on my phone. I'm looking at things for my kids, not trying to hook up on Tinder with randoms or play Candy Crush." I told her the reason people were on their phones didn't matter unless it was an actual emergency, and she rolled her eyes. She also tried to argue with me about the fact that I would only schedule her during the day and not at night. Nights are more lucrative because customers buy more alcoholic drinks, thus higher tips. I reminded her that when she took the job, she signed up specifically for day shifts, and most of my waitresses are college students who have classes during the day, so there's no flexibility with their scheduling requirements. She proceeded to yell at me that her desires should trump theirs because she's a mom and needs more money than them, then slammed my office door shut when I wouldn't cave. The final straw was when I heard from one of the waitresses, who I'm very close to, about how she would talk about how she didn't respect me as a manager and often brought up my lack of desire for kids. She would also apparently say things like, "I'm not going to take orders from somebody who hasn't even matured past the I don't want kids phase." Between the constant, blatant disrespect and the fact that she was barely a passable waitress anyway, I decided to fire her. 2 waitresses confronted me, telling me it was wrong of me to fire her and begged me to give her job back. They had no defense for her, only that she has 4 kids. If she has 4 kids dependent on her, it's on her that she repeatedly treated her boss like a total joke. It's not like I fired her over one incident. There were countless instances of horrid behavior and blatant disregard for authority that she openly and shamelessly stated was rooted in ageism and my maternal status. So yeah, it's a shame that her kids had to suffer for their mom's behavior, but that's her responsibility and I have no regrets for throwing out the trash. Definitely super duper entitled, my friends, but she'll learn. At my work, I'm in a supervisory position, and there have been countless times where I've had guys in their 50s or 60s totally disregard my authority just because I'm like half their age. They usually don't end up lasting long, not because I fire them or my boss fires them, but because they refuse to take orders from somebody who's half their age. So, yeah, some days my work is really fun. One person's comment said, "I had a male employee tell me that I couldn't discipline him because he had 3 kids and a wife to support. I looked him square in the eye and said, 'And that's my problem because—'" He was silent. I then said, "Yours is a situation of your own making, both with your personal choices and the mess you find yourself in with me. Your problem with me is the one that I can do something about, but your personal problem is something only you can deal with." Yeah, the whole "you can't discipline me because I have kids and a wife to support" thing? No, sir. That's definitely not how it works in the employment world. Next story. As a parent to a 7-year-old girl and an almost 10-year-old boy, I certainly run into my fair share of entitled parents throughout my decade of parenting. The vast majority of parents I've crossed paths with are reasonable. Recently, however, I ran into one of the most ridiculously entitled moms. She will be referred to as Backyard Mom for the sake of this post. Last spring, I purchased one of those wooden play structures to put in the backyard. I purposely chose one that's geared toward older kids. It has a rock climbing wall, higher swings, a wooden clubhouse accessible by ladder, and a steeper slide leading down from the clubhouse. My kids love it, it's perfect for them. About 2 weeks ago, I was doing dishes in my kitchen. I looked out the window facing the backyard and saw 2 younger children I didn't know playing on the structure. Within 20 seconds of watching, Kid A, who's maybe 2 years old, fell backward directly on her back while attempting to swing on one of the swings. Kid B, who was 4 years old, attempted to go up the ladder but lost his footing and fell through the ladder, so he was trying to pull himself back up. I did not see a parent in sight, so I ran out there. Kid A was crying, likely having knocked the wind out of herself. Kid B ended up falling through the ladder. I asked Kid B where his parents were, and he told me they were at home and pointed down the street. He also told me that his mom had sent them up to my home to play on the playset. Now, my backyard is not fenced in, and I live on the corner of a fairly busy street directly across from an elementary school, so the big wooden structure is fairly easy to see. 2 things crossed my mind. 1, I had no idea who these young kids were. 2, if they were to get hurt playing on a structure clearly much too advanced for them on my property, I did not want to be responsible if they broke a bone or seriously injured themselves. So, being worried and thinking that these 2 possibly got out of their home without their parents' knowledge, I asked the younger boy to point out their home so I could talk to their mom. Kid B grabbed Kid A's hand, as she was still wailing, and led me from my backyard to the front yard and walked me about 15 houses down the street. When I got to the door, the mom answered while talking on her cell phone and said, can I help you? I told her, yeah, your kids made their way to the play structure in my backyard up the street. It's designed for bigger kids, and I don't feel comfortable having them in my backyard unattended. She said, oh, well, I told them they can play in it. It's fine, they have my permission. I told her, yeah, but they don't have my permission. Your daughter, especially, is too small, and I saw her fall backwards from a swing that's higher, set for my 10-year-old. She replied, are you calling my kids inept and incapable? I told her, no, I'm asking you to please let them know not to come to my backyard anymore. I'm afraid they'll get hurt. So, at this point, the woman hurried the kids into her house and slammed the door in my face. Whatever. Over the next 2 weeks, the kids came into my backyard unattended 5 more times. I have my own 2 kids on the lookout, and every time they come into the yard they let me know. Each time, the oldest one told me that his mother sent them to my backyard because, quote, it's the neighborhood swing set. So, each time, I've walked them back down to their home, and each time the mom has become increasingly angry, calling me a stupid neighbor and an uncaring piece of junk, among other gems. Twice, she's called me these names in front of my own children. This morning, Saturday, at 7 o'clock in the morning, I was awoken by a loud scream in the backyard. I looked out the window and Kid B was screaming and stomping his foot in my grass. I put on some slippers and headed outside to see what was going on. This kid woke up my own kids as well as my neighbors, all of whom came outside to the windows to see what the heck was going on. I told the kid he had to go home now. I walked him to the sidewalk a bit and watched him walk back into his home. I turned around to head back into my place, and then it happened. The mom, in a robe and barefoot, came out of her door, making a beeline toward me. She was literally running and screaming bloody murder. She started yelling, you freaking jerk! You planted dog poop in your yard to keep my kid away? Are you serious? I was totally bewildered and caught off guard. I didn't even have my phone with me to call the police if this crazy lady decided to attack me. I tried speeding up my pace and ignoring her, but this lady turned into a shoeless Usain Bolt and caught up with me. She actually got right in front of my path to my place and said, hey, how dare you do that to a 4-year-old? Planting dog poop? I know you don't even have a dog. I explained to her rather calmly that my backyard is private property and that I had asked her children to stay out of it repeatedly. I told her the next time she sent her unattended kids to someone else's yard, I would call the police to escort the kids home. This caused her to blow her top and she said, police? Police? If you don't give me $60 to replace the shoes that you've ruined with your dog poop, I'm calling my lawyer. It's unsafe playing conditions. I stepped around her to get past where she was blocking my way. At this point, a neighbor came outside on his porch to see what the loud commotion was about on Saturday morning. She saw this, looked somewhat embarrassed, surprisingly, and loudly told me once more that she was going to sue me before turning toward her house and walking back down the street. This woman has let her very young kids walk 15 houses up the road alone multiple times, yet she's going to scream unsafe because her kid stepped in dog poop? I just can't get over the entitlement. I can't imagine blatantly ignoring someone asking not to let her children come into my yard. I can't imagine not caring about my kids' safety that much. I've purchased a camera for my backyard and will be installing it this week. So, yeah, OP definitely should have gotten the police involved. Who in their right mind would let a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old walk down the street to a random person's backyard and play unattended? Just the thought of those two walking around without an adult to supervise them makes me really, really uncomfortable, guys. Now, I don't want to judge and point fingers here and say that the mom is a bad parent, but my goodness, she's a bad parent. You shouldn't be letting a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old wander the streets alone. Honestly, if those kids were to be taken, it's better to have CPS take them than kidnappers. It's unbelievable, my friends. Next story? Okay, so this just happened, and it may be the most cliched Karen encounter I've ever had. My flatmate has sensory issues, and thus strict preferences when it comes to food. I do our grocery shopping each week and always get them the same brand of damper bread rolls with no seeds. They are the softest bread available, and it's not unusual for me to get the last one on the shelf on a Friday, which happened to be today. I should also add that my genetic disorder, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, means that my skin does not age normally, so while I'm turning 30, this year I'm often mistaken for anywhere between 17 to 25 years old, depending on the situation and how I'm dressed. Not even 30 seconds after I put the bread rolls in my trolley, I heard a woman behind me making that inhaling through her teeth sound, followed by I turned around and was greeted by the sight of a super stereotypical Karen in every sense, except for her hair. She had 2 sizes too small yoga pants on and a workout top with at least 3 inches of wrinkled cleavage bursting out of it and way too much gold jewelry. She was also wearing sunglasses inside the supermarket with that simpering, wincing expression on her orange face. She said, "I'm so sorry about that, love, but I'm gonna have to ask you to give me that bread." I couldn't fight the instinct and immediately burst out laughing. The whole scenario was just too much for me. Karen, with her hand on her hip, said, "What the heck is so bloody funny?" I told her, "Well, you must be joking, right?" She replied, "There's no need to be so bloody rude. Give me that bread now or I'll be having a word with your parents." Me, bristling at being spoken down to yet again, said, "You're not having my bread. Leave me the heck alone." And I walked away. I heard huffing behind me, but I just ignored it and carried on with my shopping. I thought that was it, but of course, Karen needed to try to put me in my place. As I'm sure she was upset, she showed up several aisles later with a member of staff. But here's the thing. I'm a disabled woman who shops for the same exact things on the same days every week, so I've had to ask staff for help on plenty of occasions. Many of the staff at the supermarket know me fairly well. So when Karen showed up with Janelle pointing aggressively at me, she was probably quite surprised when Janelle said, "Oh, hi, Op. You're a bit later than usual today, aren't you? Everything okay?" Karen interjected, saying, "That's the thieving brat who stole that bread out of my trolley and refused to give it back." Janelle, side-eyeing Karen, said, "Is that what really happened, Op?" I told her, actually, I just literally got it off the shelf first, and Karen here demanded that I give it to her, and I guess she did not know how to handle being told no. So Karen, of course, said that I was lying. I said, "How about we just review the security footage and clear this up so we can get on with our days?" Karen responded, "Excuse me? Are you calling me a liar? I've never been so offended in all my life. I will not have my character assassinated by a checkout chick." And yeah, she genuinely said checkout chick. Janelle, with a frustrated sigh, said, "Ope, just carry on with your shopping. I've got this from here." I told her, "Thanks, hun. Good luck," and I went to leave, knowing that hanging around would have definitely further inflamed the situation. Janelle said to Karen, "I'm gonna have to ask you to leave." Karen started mouthing off, but I don't know exactly what she said. It included something about my parents and getting Janelle fired, but I was out of there fairly quickly. I did not see Karen again after that, and I don't know whether she left on her own accord, but I didn't see any huge commotion, so I'm guessing she eventually did. What an absolutely absurd creature, guys. Leave it up to a Karen to pretend you stole something from her cart. Guys, I've never worked at a supermarket, but I'm sure stuff like this happens on a daily basis. I'm almost 100% certain. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our Entitled People series. Next story. I currently do not speak to my mother, nor have I for many months now. Somehow she still finds a way to interfere in my life and the decisions I make for my child. My husband and I both come from families that don't believe in vaccinations. His side is against it, but doesn't shame us for vaccinating our daughter. My mother, however, has a lot to say about it. Since we were both raised to distrust science, it was natural for us to be against vaccinating our daughter when she was born. I had a home birth, so it was easy to avoid everything. We would lie to pediatricians about it and just followed what our parents did when we were kids. But with the new COVID vaccine, I started to consider getting it and decided to do some actual research on vaccinations as a whole. My husband and I made the decision to get vaccinated ourselves and to start a vaccination schedule for our 6-month-old baby to catch her up. This morning we went in to get her first shot. Everything went smoothly, and so far she seems fine. She's been a bit fussy and sleepier than usual, but the pediatrician said that's normal and should pass in a day or two. We left feeling proud that we educated ourselves effectively and set our baby up for success. Then I got a call. I thought it was from my grandpa, but when I answered, the first thing I heard was, "When you wake up and she isn't breathing, you'll be sorry. I can't believe you did this to my little girl." I hung up immediately and started to panic. I eventually traced it back to a family member who's a doctor. I had asked her questions about vaccines and told her we were going today. She was excited for us and must have told my grandpa, who then told my mom. And then, boom, it's the end of the world. My mother-in-law later found out and was supportive despite her own opinions about vaccines. She told us, "It's your decision, and I trust whatever you do is best for her." I'm glad we have her to reassure us. But now, I've been getting texts and calls from my mom through my grandpa's phone, absolutely freaking out. She's saying she hopes something bad happens to my daughter, so I'll see the consequences of my actions. She even said she's praying for her, whatever that means. Ultimately, we're confident in our decision and will continue with her vaccination schedule, although at times we do question if we made the right choice. I'm sure everything's going to be fine, but my mother seriously needs to calm down. Yikes, guys, what a terrible thing for a mother to say. I hope something bad happens to her so you'll see the consequences. Differences aside, she had no right to say something that absurd. One commenter summed it up perfectly. OP should have said, "Sorry, Mom. You wanted your granddaughter to die to prove your point, so now you don't get to see her anymore." Wishing harm on your grandkid just to prove your daughter wrong is absolutely ridiculous. It's definitely time to change phone numbers and cut contact after that. Next story. I live in a rural neighborhood where everyone has 3 to 8 acres, so we're all pretty spaced out. I live on 5 acres, and my nearest neighbors are a sweet elderly couple about 1 acre away. They're perfect. The husband does yard work as a hobby, and his wife bakes. We have a nice agreement where, if I need something big chainsawed, he takes the wood for their fireplace, and in exchange, I trade recipes and bake with his wife. Here's where things go south. My neighbor's son, his wife, and their 2 girls, aged 4 and 7, live in the nearest city but didn't feel safe there. I don't blame them, and because my neighbors are saints, they opened their home and the family moved in. Until this point, I was the youngest person in the neighborhood at 29 years old, so having kids wandering around was new for everybody. At first, it wasn't a big issue. They stayed inside, got settled, and maybe they were good kids. It's a long shot, I know, but one can hope. One morning, I was letting my horses, a Clydesdale and a Welsh pony, out into the front pasture, when I heard the most high-pitched squealing from next door. It was so shrill that my Clydesdale second-guessed going outside but cautiously proceeded, only to be met with more squeals. I popped my head out and saw the 2 girls absolutely losing their minds. I get it, a little white pony and the horse from Brave, but still, they're large animals the girls don't know. They should have the sense not to approach them, right? Nope, not a chance. These kids sprinted to the fence, shrieking. The pony ran around in panic while the Clydesdale just stood there with the same look I had on my face. Then the 4-year-old started crawling under the fence. Absolutely not. I said, "Don't you dare climb under that fence." I said it firmly and admittedly a bit harshly, but I'll be darned if I let my horses trample a kid. I walked over to them and they looked like they were about to cry. I explained firmly that these are big animals that could easily hurt them and to never go under the fence. I also pointed to the no trespassing sign and explained what it meant. They went home and I cleaned the stalls. An hour later, I heard someone banging on my door. From my barn's hatch door, I could see the kid's mom having a conversation with my mom. Then the kid's mom stormed down to the barn. I'd never met this lady, but I could spot an entitled Karen a mile away. She started going off on me, saying, "How dare you make my kids cry? They just wanted to see the ponies." When she took a breath, I got my point across. I said, "Ma'am, your youngest was crawling under the fence toward 2 large animals, neither of which you know. That Clydesdale weighs 2,000 pounds. He could crush you without feeling it and cause permanent damage. The pony looks cute, but he's flighty, untrustworthy, and tends to bite and spook easily. Your kids are not allowed near them without my consent and heavy supervision, and they are never allowed in the pasture with them. Do you understand?" I then pointed out my no trespassing signs. She started ranting, saying, "If they're so dangerous, why do you have them? I should call animal control." I responded, 1. They're my personal horses, and yes, I'm allowed to have them. 2. Your kids trespassed on my property, disregarding my signs, and I'm trying to keep them safe. 3. This is not a petting zoo. She huffed off, and I continued working. Later that evening, when the husband got home, I explained what happened. He was understandably alarmed and agreed that the situation was dangerous. My horses aren't aggressive, but it's inherently risky for a 50 to 200-pound human to be near a 2,000-pound horse if you don't know what you're doing. I was optimistic about his reaction, but since he's not home often, I stayed cautious. Later that week, while working from home, I heard screaming. Not excited screaming, but scared little kids screaming. I rushed outside and saw the 4-year-old bawling in the middle of the pasture, with the pony doing laps around the perimeter as my Clydesdale slowly approached her. The 7-year-old was crying outside the fence calling for her mom, but, clearly, their mom wasn't watching them. My initial terror eased a bit because my Clydesdale is essentially a golden retriever in a horse's body, the sweetest pushover in the world. He was approaching her slowly and non-threateningly, and with him so close the pony wouldn't rush them. Thank goodness. I went in, asked the girl if she was hurt. She wasn't, just scared, picked her up and walked out, making my Clydesdale heel to me just in case the pony got any ideas. The mom was still nowhere in sight, so I took the girls to my neighbors. What followed was about 30 minutes of screaming and crying. The girl's mother opened the door and started screaming at me, firing off questions before my neighbors intervened. I explained exactly what happened, and my elderly neighbors blew up at her, not me, for being so irresponsible and negligent. They pointed out how the girls could have been hurt. The Karen tried to throw blame on me, but they weren't having it. My neighbors apologized profusely, and I went about my day. When the husband got home, he came by and apologized for his family's behavior, especially his wife's. I accepted it and said I understood that they're little girls, and I know the allure of magnificent, fluffy horses. The mom was at fault for not watching them, and I was just glad everyone was okay. The girls were still shaken up, so I extended an olive branch because I was once an overexcited kid who loved horses too. I just had a mom who knew what she was doing around them, and I didn't want this to traumatize the girls completely. The next day, I properly introduced them to my Clydesdale in a stall with the inside hatch open, supervised by their father and me. They loved it, the Clydesdale loved the attention, and everyone was happy, right? Well, except for the mom, who took my olive branch as an offer to teach her kids horseback riding and give them free lessons. Her husband shut that down hard, and presumably so did my neighbors. Since then, it's been pretty quiet. I did, however, install a second electrical wire at the bottom of the fence, not just the top, just in case. And yes, the 7-year-old tested it, got zapped pretty good, and got in trouble with her dad. Here's hoping it stays peaceful. Seriously though, don't go up to animals you don't know, guys. Leave it to the super entitled lady to give you grief for not letting her daughter play with your horses. Does she not understand that her kids could have been severely injured? Horses can spook easily and run wild. She's lucky the pony only ran laps around the perimeter instead of mowing down her 4-year-old. That could have been so bad. Then again, I don't own horses, so my opinion might not count. Next story. I was working for a decent-sized family company that had internally promoted a manager from another department to run a sizable branch. He was warned about a particular employee, whom I'll call Karen, who was known to cause trouble and was generally very contentious. Karen worked in inside sales and was a notorious gossip who loved spreading rumors, regardless of their truth. She also made several younger male co-workers uncomfortable with her rather aggressive advances. At best, she was okay at her job, but generally made the workplace less than pleasant. Karen also had a reputation for annually seeking raises from the previous manager by threatening to resign, which was usually met with some form of concession just to placate her and keep her. The new manager was well aware of her tactics. When Karen walked into his office with her usual routine, announcing that she simply wasn't going to be able to work there anymore, he was unfazed. He immediately responded with sincere regrets that they wouldn't get to work together professionally. Karen's confidence shifted to fear. She floundered, saying she wasn't making what she needed to make. The manager agreed with her and gave her his best wishes for her next opportunity. He then stood and said he'd need something formal written up for HR, but she could do it any time that day. Wasting no time, he sent a glowing note to the staff about losing a true asset to the department and invited everyone to a going-away party in the kitchen that afternoon. At the party, Karen was like a woman attending her own funeral, interacting with guests, while probably wondering how she'd go home and explain to her husband that she had quit her job that morning. Fortunately for all, She was too prideful to admit it was all a tactic. That was Karen's last day with the company. Afterward, the branch ran fairly smoothly. It turns out she was indeed mediocre, and her customers were more than happy to have a fresh representative on their accounts. Oh my goodness, guys, this happens all the time at my work. People threaten my boss by saying they'll quit, and so many times he just says, "See ya?" I love this comment that sums it up perfectly. It's best to make sure you're actually irreplaceable before pretending to be irreplaceable. Oh, silly, silly Karen. And this is my view on the story. Mommy employee, I was appalled by this employee's blatant disrespect. As a young supervisor myself, I've dealt with older employees questioning my authority, but her using her motherhood to undermine you is next-level entitlement. Her phone excuse, claiming it's different because it's for her kids, was laughable. Yelling about night shifts despite agreeing to days? Absurd. I'd have fired her too after her gossip about your childless status. Her kids aren't your problem, her behavior was. Good call tossing that trash. Backyard mom, this mom's negligence blows my mind. Letting a 2- and 4-year-old wander 15 houses to your unfenced yard? That's reckless parenting. Her calling your playset the neighborhood swing set and accusing you of planting dog poop is peak entitlement. I'd have called the police after the second trespass. Her kids could have been seriously hurt, and she's screaming about her rights? Installing that camera was smart. She's lucky it was just poop and not a hospital visit. Supermarket Karen. Karen demanding my bread rolls for my flatmate with sensory issues was ridiculous. Her stereotypical look and entitled attitude, threatening to tattle to my parents at 32, had me cackling. Accusing me of stealing from her cart? Delusional. Thank goodness for Janelle, who knew me and shut her down. Karen's check-out chick jab and threats to get Janelle fired were pathetic. I bet she slunk out, tail between her legs, after that public humiliation. Anti-vax mom, your mom's reaction to your vaccination decision was unhinged. Wishing harm on your baby to prove a point? That's vile. I admire your resolve to research and vaccinate despite your upbringing. Her relentless calls via your grandpa's phone are manipulative. I'd have changed my number ages ago. Your mother-in-law's support was refreshing. Stick to your guns. Your daughter's health comes first, and your mom needs serious boundaries. Horse mom Karen, this Karen's negligence letting her kids near your horses was infuriating. A 2,000-pound Clydesdale and a flighty pony aren't toys. Her rant about it not being a petting zoo after her 4-year-old trespassed was absurd. I'm glad your neighbors and her husband backed you up. Your olive branch was kinder than I'd have been, but her assuming free lessons? Entitled to the core. That electric fence was a smart move. Office Karen. Karen's bluff about quitting to snag a raise was a terrible miscalculation. I love how the manager called her out, throwing a going-away party to seal her fate. Her gossip and inappropriate advances made the workplace toxic, so good riddance. I've seen similar tactics at my job, people thinking they're irreplaceable. The manager's swift handling was perfect. Karen learned the hard way, don't play games with someone who knows your tricks. Guys, we made it. If you enjoyed the stories today, do leave a thumbs up, and if you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button. If you missed the last episode of our Entitled People series, check it out if you haven't. I'll see you guys in the next one. I love you!